What's up, everybody? We're live here on YouTube. Everybody can join me also on Patreon, patreon.com/The Mystical Spiral. That's the place to be. I'm live on Zoom, also on Patreon, so my patrons can join. Give it a minute so I see if anybody's up in the chat room here. Why can't I get back to the YouTube one? Oh, here we go. Let me know who's with me if people are on YouTube as well. We'll be live this morning. So people on my Patreon and all over on the YouTube network, we're going through some new beginnings here all over the world. New changes are happening. And in fact, I'm going through a massive big change right now. I'm not going to give the exact location right now, but me and my family are going out to Amish country. And it's really a risky move because we got enough, exactly enough money to get out there. So once we do, though, all these years, I've been doing my radio show, my Patreon, my business, everything from one bedroom. And, with me, my daughter, and my wife, I'm going to be able to have my own office so we can just do my radio show, we'll have different camera angles. I'm going to have my buddy Larry, who's free energy, who's going to be living right in the same area as me. He's right down the road. He's going to be my assistant. So we'll have double camera angles, better production. And I'm going to be able to do full-time devoted to not only my Patreon, but my Copper and Crystals, YouTube, my radio show. Everything will be a better production, and I'll be able to do it at a better commitment, regular basis every day. In fact, because right now, between the three of us living out of one bedroom, it's very, very hard for me to do live shows. Very, very hard for me to do my live streams and things like that. So a lot of times I have to go out in the wilderness and do things. So we'll still be doing the wilderness talks, just in a different location. So that's been going on today. Actually, in a little while from now, I'll be driving about 6 hours. So it's very scary when you're going to a new place with all your belongings and stuff like that, right? So if anybody wants to contribute to by either purchasing crystals or copper on my website, we got massive deals on there, or even donating to my cause or joining my Patreon. This money will be going to benefit all of you guys because of the information I provide, the platform I provide, and the better production I will be getting because of this. This is a huge move for me. It took everything I have to do this. The last 5 years, we've been struggling in a one bedroom, and it's a big thing. So if anybody wants to contribute and support us and donate, that is very welcomed. And believe me, it is well spent, and it will be going to a good cause. I'm one of the realest mother effers out there, and it's taken me a long time to get us established because I take the hard route and I don't sell out. There's a lot of things that go behind that I won't mention on here because I feel it would be disrespecting myself to talk about people's things and things like that, and other people. But we're going to go deep today. In fact, we're going to talk about some very interesting things because these are new beginnings. And I've been retranslating most of the ancient writings that I've been working on for many, many years. I got to admit, you have to be wrong before you can find the truth. And that's what scholars and academics and a lot of people have problems with today, because they might have believed or spoke on something that they thought it meant for many, many years. And then when they admit that they could be wrong and that it's something else, they they feel that's like saying that everything they've worked on is crap, but that's not true. To be able to find real knowledge and to have real success and to find real truth and real power in that truth, real harmony with yourself and the truth, you first got to be wrong for many, many times, right? Anything you're really good at and at least, right? And you have a skill at too, right? You have to really work at that. There's a lot of trial and errors. Well, that comes with finding real truth in things. Sometimes when you're looking to achieve something and discover something, you have to have many, many fallacies along the way, right? And that it's that almost your struggle to find the truth and the war you have to go through, push yourself beyond the limits of most people would quit at, that is part of the harmony of the universe and the reward of finding the truth eventually, or becoming a master at what you're doing, or if you want to so-called say a master, or whatever it's called, an expert, right? Whatever you're working on, to become an expert at something, you first have to be horrible at it for a long period of time, right? So it goes the same thing with these ancient writings. Like, do you really think that an average modern scholar, academic, or anyone for that matter, can look at a 5,000-year-old hieroglyphic that at the time of its inception, it was only the symbol's origins and true meaning was only given to a chosen few, like the pharaoh and the temple priest? They only know what it truly metaphorically and poetically described. Do you really, and it was never given to common man. Common man wasn't even allowed access to these walls, right? Do you really think somebody 5,000 years later, who is just an academic and a scholar and studies this stuff, do you really think they can look at that hieroglyphic and be able to translate the true meaning and the true meaning of its origins? Because I got to tell you, there's dynasties and pharaohs and priests that didn't know the true meaning of these symbols, right? You can have a pharaoh 200 years later that have no idea what the true meaning was, and their inscriptions could be depicting something wrong. Right? I mean, we have this all throughout history. Look at the Knights Templars, right? They hired these Persian mathematicians, whatever the information they discovered in the temples in Jerusalem, right? They were able to come back to France and build these cathedral churches with specific windows where the glass in these windows, they had hired Persian mathematicians to help them do this, to make these windows, and astrologers. And the very glass that was used in those windows, they don't even know 100 years later, they couldn't duplicate it. The kind of glass that was used in those windows is the kind of glass that you see like Libyan desert glass, like it was so hot, like from a comet strike or something, like when sand gets made into glass or something. It's like a really high heat was made this. They don't even know how they did it back in the 1100s. 100 years later, they couldn't even duplicate it. That kind of knowledge is in these symbols in ancient Egyptian and ancient Near East, a lot of ancient cultures, right? So just from the academic scholar side alone, no average person or any person can just look at it and be able to translate it through academics. It's impossible. It's impossible. You might be able to translate what the word of the hieroglyphic might mean, but what it's truly, the origins of what it's truly metaphorically and symbolically representing, you can't just do it through academics. The only way in our modern time we can find the true origins from that, you have to go from a few sides. First, you do have to have some of the academic and scholarly definitions of what they mean. It's a good starting point. But the only way to really come to that truth is if you have the genetic memory of an adept or a spiritual initiate. If you, in somewhere in your genetic past, in your genetic memory, that you're a spiritual adept, you're a spiritual initiate within these cultures. If that's somewhere embedded within your genetic memory, your DNA, your genetic past, then that can be accessed. But it just doesn't come. The universe has to see true hard work, and your quest has to be noble for those answers. And I got to tell you, for many, many years, I was wrong with certain things that I was thinking certain symbols meant, and certain things meant in the Bible and other, cherished writings, right? But I can admit that now that I was wrong. It was stepping stones to finding some of the answers, like the Ankh. The Ankh being the coronal mass ejection loop. They also have a word Ak, where this writer and researcher Judy King, she had said the Ak, AKH, was the coronal loop. And in my opinion, both the Ak and the Ankh are the coronal loop, both derived from the same phrase and word, both describing the interesting dynamics and even shape of a coronal loop and coronal mass ejection, right? The Ak being a symbol of intelligence, or symbol of the crested ibis, right? Also a symbol of light emanating from, right, the sun, basically, right? The ibis carrying that crested loop, right? And same with the way the Ankh is the coronal loop of the coronal mass ejection, and the way they describe the Ankh, right? It being the breath of life. Well, the sun is life, and a coronal mass ejection literally is the breath of the sun bursting these loops of energy, of plasmic information, right? And the Ankh is also talked about as being the key to life. Well, the Ankh, or the coronal mass ejection, is the key to shutting down the magnetic shield around this planet, the magnetosphere, to allow the plasmic information in, right? There's a key to shutting down the magnetic shield around this planet. The key is the coronal mass ejection, right? That's the key to letting in those new life codes. It's very, very interesting and poetically and metaphorically describing something that we thought is just a modern day discovery. Now, if the ancient Egyptians knew about coronal mass ejections and the interesting dynamics of their shape and structure and what they do, that is mind-blowing. Well, it's more conceivable to me. Think about it. Do you really think a culture that has made pyramids that we can't even duplicate today, with the royal cubit incorporated in it, you have the measurements, how the north, south, east, and west are perfectly aligned, right? And then how it has archaeoastronomy made out of these red granite. You got red granite obel, all these things that seem to be cut perfectly, things that we couldn't even make today, and it would take, it would just amazing structures. Not only do you have all over the world the pyramid, the obelisk, the dolmens, the cairns, the stone chambers, right? The menhirs, all these different stone beautiful structures and monuments and huge blocks in Baalbek, and all these things. Do you really think cultures that were able to make these kind of things, that their hieroglyphics and cuneiform and their writings that are associated with these things are just the primitive writings of some primitive culture's beliefs in religion? I don't know why scholars and academics assume that these are the primitive writings of a savage's religious beliefs, when meanwhile these so-called savages' monuments are high technology. It doesn't fit. These are not primitive beliefs of some savage's religion that you see inscripted. They are advanced bacterial genetics, quantum physics, plasma physics, and very, very, very much more. And they need to be interpreted in a different way. In a lot of these ancient writings, and people, the place to go is on I'm live on Patreon right now as well. I would be only on Patreon right now if people joined it at 7 a.m. But Patreon is where I want to be doing these chats, because I can go deeper and I can say things that I can't say here on YouTube, because I would get shut down. Everything would get flagged. You can join my Patreon for literally $2 a month. This is how you support us. Literally for $2 a month. And I will put daily information on there like always. And we're going to be doing daily. Finally, after 5 years, it's taken me to get this. We're in the process of this move. I'm finishing most of it today. By Friday, we will be fully moved in. I'm driving like into Amish country today with all of my belongings. So on Patreon is where the place I can really go over all this stuff the right way. Now, we got to look at things very, very differently. In most of the ancient writings, scholars see, from the connections that I have, not only through my hereditary background and having connections to the Society of Biblical Archaeology, that were doing a lot of these translations in the 1800s. Now, we didn't have some of the terminologies and discoveries that we had in the 1800s to symbolically and metaphorically even compare what I'm saying to then, right? Now, we had a transition on this planet. We went into a phase, universal and planetary phase, in 1879. If you're into Rudolf Steiner, he points this out in his books. Now, in 1879, there was a shift, not only on the spiritual plane of light, but in the physical reality here with light, right? The result was physical manifestations of actual light, different forms of light. What do I mean by this? Well, there was such a spiritual occurrence, right? Now, this can happen from one person or collectively, but on the spiritual astral plane, there was an occurrence where knowledge was achieved, truth was achieved, a light was sparked, true cosmic knowledge was awakened. This has happened before in the past. When this happened, it manifested physical forms of that as well. And some of the thoughts within certain humans on the planet and their discoveries within their own thought and free will creative network, that's connected to the quantum plasmic network we have within the stars, right? That's around all the planets. It's a plasmic quantum network of information. Around our planet, our storage facility of information is what we call the magnetosphere. That is the Akashic records, a plasmic vortex formed by the sun with swirling information and knowledge, all different bacterial codes and all sorts of molecules of creation, right? We have the Kordylewski clouds, these plasma clouds between the Earth and our moon, two of them. They're these plasmic clouds of creation. In my opinion, the same clouds that Hera created the centaurs in, clouds that Zeus, these special clouds that Zeus created his hybrids in, the same clouds that Moses was talking to that led him certain places, right? And these ancient writings, they talk about, or they have translated that many of these ancient writings are describing what happens when the sun goes down at night, like in the Litany of Ra, right? So-called the translations of the Litany of Ra, they're thinking the Litany of Ra describes what's happening at night with the sun after the sun sets, which is partly true in my opinion. But it's actually talking about what happens on the dark side when the sun sets on certain sides of the earth with the solar wind and the plasma that's coming from the sun. So it's a lot different than just talking about what happens at sunset, right? They're talking about what happens at sunset that's concerning the solar wind, the magnetosphere, our magnetic shield, and the plasma, right? So it's a lot more in depth than what original translators thought, assuming that these are savages' religions, right? And if you want to actually get some old translations, the copies of, you can get E.A. Wallace Budge, right? He's a good one to start with because some of his translations, although not correct, the word, when you realize what it's truly metaphorically and symbolically describing, you can see how Wallace Budge's translations fit. It's truly remarkable. Places where they're talking about waters and fire also can be translated as the plasmic waters and the plasmic fire from the sun. You have cold plasma and hot plasma, right? So this is what's going on, right? Especially the cold streams of plasma that they found in the magnetopause in science recently. And, you know, they're talking about the cold waters that you have to merge with inside the duat, the Am-Tuat. The Am-Tuat is the realm of Osiris, the underworld, the other world. It is the magnetosphere around the planet. This is the duat. And I will prove this on Patreon and other platforms. In fact, now I'm an administrator on AboveTopSecret.com. So if you guys also want to find me on AboveTopSecret.com as the Mystical Spiral. And of course, my copper and crystals, it's taken me many, many years to get the most rare, most ethically sourced, and finest quality crystals you can literally find on the planet, as well as the finest 999 copper on the planet, twisted and used with the royal cubit. I also have just regular copper and crystal items, but I also have tensor copper items, inspired after Slim Sperling, but my own style, right? Used from the royal cubit. I've even made custom phone stands, right? Cell phone stands to EMF protecting stands, right? So some of these are one-of-a-kind items that only a few people have in the world. Really, really incredible stuff. I even make custom copper and crystal pendants from very, very rare crystals like this golden healer Himalayan quartz that has rainbow flash on it and things like that. So anybody wants to have something custom made, they can talk about that as well. I'm also what I consider a crystal skull guardian. I've been working with crystal skulls since I'm 13 years old, and I have a collection of my own of hundreds of skulls. I also sell crystal skulls that I have master carved, and I get the most ethically sourced crystals I can find. And some of these skulls and crystals I have imprinted and charged at sacred spots all over the United States, including New York State and the North Salem, New York, balanced rock, red granite megalithic dolmen that has solar alignments during Lionsgate and during winter solstice. So some of these crystal skulls and crystals that I've charged are literally one of a kind that you can never get ever again. Ones that were charged on winter solstice 2021 during the solar alignment at a red granite megalithic dolmen that's shaped like Sekhmet, and the Catstone, right? The North Salem, New York balanced rock. I mean, these are literally priceless heirlooms in the future, right? And not to mention that much of my crystals in the future will be very, very hard to get, will be worth very much more, especially the copper products. The copper will be worth much more physically in the future, not to mention as it ages and oxidizes, it gets even stronger. That's why I urge you. I know a lot of you contact me that's been customers of mine for a few years and say, hey, it's been several years now and the copper is getting a little dirty. How do I clean it? Well, if you're using the copper only as a pendant, I would suggest you clean it then. If you want it shiny like it was brand new, you can clean it. But if you're using it as a device, I would think about not cleaning it, because as it oxidizes and ages, it gets more powerful. It gets stronger. Right. So that's another thing. But like I would get several. I would get one for just having as a pendant so you keep it nice and shiny, and then others that you use as a healing device. Right. So we're going to get into some very interesting things today before I go, because I have to go in a few minutes. But we're going to first look at, and we're continuous on Patreon, but we're going to look at what the ancient writings of Horus. I mean, Horus for a minute, right? Because we have so much to go into. And they have the ancient writings of the death of Horus, the birth of Horus, right? And these legends of the death of Horus, right, they talk about that they are basically incantations against reptiles and noxious creatures, just in general, right? There's these incantations against these poisonous creatures, right? Well, the legend of the death of Horus involves him going through a sting from a scorpion, right? And also involves his resurrection through Thoth, which is the scribe, or the one who collects the codes and writes the codes of DNA and bacteria. He's the cosmic scribe, right? He's the one that is literally the one that deciphers the code of DNA, records it, stores it, and edits it, right? These are magical, so-called magical texts, right? Well, these incantations, in my opinion, the reptiles, the noxious creatures that have poison, and the scorpions that have poison are talking about bacteria and viruses that can kill, and the bacteriophages that literally sting and inject other DNA, horizontal gene transfer, it's called, within the gut and within the body, right? This is very much like a scorpion. And if you look at what DNA and chromosomes and bacterias and things like that look like, they look like little serpents and little worms, right? So you got to look at this in a very, very different way. So these incantations against reptiles and noxious, poisonous creatures are literally ways of battling, ways of taking away virus and curing virus from the dead. Because if something led to someone's demise, if they are getting reorganized within the plasma waters, all of their molecules are being reorganized, then you would have to remove the cells of cancer. You would have to remove the diseases within the cells and within the very DNA of the body, within the magnetic duplicate of the body that retains the imprint of that genetic memory and of that life, right? The two bodies that cross over into the waters, into the duat, right? Now, they specifically, now bacterial and bacteriophages, they enter in through the gut, and this is where things can transform, right? To your E. coli and things like this, right off the top of the incantation. First line, get thee back, Apep. Now, Apep or Apophis is a virus, is most likely a lax chromosome that destroys, right? It is a destroying virus. And it says right here, the first line, get thee back, Apep, thou enemy of Ra, thou winding serpent in the form of an intestine, without arms and without legs. The body cannot stand upright, so that thou mayest have therein being long is thy tail. In front of thy den, thou enemy, retreat before Ra. So they're talking about some sort of bacterial or virus. No arms, no legs. Your body can't stand upright. Long is thy tail. And when they're saying in the form of an intestine, I really think it should be translated inside the intestine, or it forms inside the intestine, or something like that. You know, and it talks about how all of this coming up, and then the second line, Ra, thy head shall be cut off, and the slaughter of thee shall be carried out. That's literally you're getting rid of, you're dissecting the virus, you're removing it, right? Thou shalt not lift up thy face for his flame is in thy accursed soul. Right. So not only is when after death, if you're being reorganized in those plasmic waters, right? And we'll go through it in the future. You know, I've gone through it on my Patreon. There's a specific journey that they take up through the North Pole, because that's where there's a gap that's where you have most of the auroras come in. That's where there's a gap in the magnetic shield. They literally guide them through the gap in the magnetic shield to enter into the double doors of the Duat, into the plasmic waters. And they literally tell them there's the east and west, and you got to find the cold stream of plasma, the magnetopause, and merge with that arm, the arm of Re or Ra, right? The cold waters, they called it. They even call it the cold waters, the ferry ride over the cold waters. I mean, it's amazing. And it's once they're in those waters, that's where it's magnetic reconnection and reassembly. So not only does all of your viruses and diseases and everything need to be taken out, but also all of your virus of thoughts and your wrongdoings that's recorded within you. All of this needs to be accessed, literally judged, weighed, and decided over. And this is a very, very interesting thing that goes on. Right? It's like a quantum plasmic network that you're in. And it decides your fate. And I mean, it's just interesting poetic metaphors. I can't ever be able to tell you what this 100% means, but I know I'm on the right track because the universe has shown me this. My body has responded for it. When I've been out in the wilderness is where I go to truly translate this. All of a sudden, the geese will be flying over me and honking. And this is a true sign to the ancient Egyptians. They looked at as the cosmic honker, literally the cosmic cackler, the great cackler of ancient Egypt that brings the cosmic eggs, right? Also woodpeckers and things like this will start to arrive when I come to some of the truth. It's like the time just disappears when you find true cosmic knowledge, and the universe rewards you for a brief moment, which can be just a second, but it's also a second of eternity. All the birds seem to be flowing with you. You understand the flight of the birds and the sound of the birds. The wind seems to be whispering just to you. The air seems to be enchanted or drunk or intoxicated around you, right? Almost like when you're on ecstasy and you're walking down the street and swaying. It's different than that, but it's a good similarity. I mean, but the air and everything seems to be enchanted around you for a moment. It's a plurality of worlds moment where you're given or have accessed truth, cosmic truth. And this has happened while I've been working on writings like this. All of these spots, like, and you got to look at the context. The context doesn't fit the other translations. People are just pulling out little things and little pieces and thinking that works. Like they'll go to a thing and be like, look, this looks similar to a helicopter or a plane. So that's what, are you even looking at the context of the rest of it? And then, you know, a lot of these people that go on like Gaia TV and things like that, I won't mention names. They put on nice suits and they look nice in a suit and they go on there. They're not real researchers or theorists even, because they're just someone that's read a book. Most of them that go up there, a majority of them are repeating Zecharia Sitchin's work. A majority of them. That's not research. That's called congratulations, you've finished a book, or if you even read the whole book. And Zecharia Sitchin, he wrote like novellas of research. They're like a series of like almost novellas. They were his own own translations that were like his own storyline that he made. They are nowhere the truth or real translations. They're modified not to mention he most likely worked for the Mossad. I don't know if anybody realized that. I can't prove it, but he most likely was an agent for the Mossad. So he had an agenda, and he formed this hypothesis that we were only made for slaves to mine gold, and all of that comes from him, right? And all of these people that go on there, that's not researching. Researching is when you go through all the available publicated translations and you form your own theories from this and you come to your own conclusions. Not that you purchased the series of Zecharia Sitchin's books and read them. That's called reading, not researching. It's a big difference. Big difference, right? So you can go get dressed up in a nice suit and go on Gaia TV and talk like you know things, but from someone like me who's read everything from Zecharia Sitchin to Kirchner to Max Mueller to Wallace Budge to all these different people from all the way from the 1800s to modern day translations of the Ugaritic with Nicholas Wyatt and all these other people, right? I've gone through all those different translations. So someone like me who hears people speak, I know immediately where they're getting that information from. Immediately. And they don't like it if I call them on it. Like, I remember going on Richard C. Hoagland's show, and people that produced that show, you know, which for some reason, after when I got on it, we were all talking in the group chat room afterwards for like a while. We were having fun, but then for some reason, one of the producers wanted to get in a pissing match with me because he realized I knew a lot and he wanted to show me he knew a lot. But then he was just talking Zecharia Sitchin theories and work. And I mentioned to him, I was like, oh, it doesn't sound like you've read anything else but Zecharia Sitchin. And the other people in the chat room like, whoa, you pinned him so good because no one ever said it to him like that. I was like, well, I knew it right away. He was saying it word for word. Right? That's not researching, that's reading. And maybe you should be congratulated because maybe nowadays most people don't read, but like you don't need a pat on the back for reading. You know, that's not real researching. And unfortunately, that's what we have nowadays with a lot of things going on. There's some good things out there, but there's some bad things. And someone comes up with something new. All the other scholars that were saying something else for a long period of time, they're not going to go with it because then it makes them look like crap. But that shouldn't be true, because I can admit I've been wrong many, many times before, but that led me to find the truth. All this, look at what they're saying. Be vomited, O poison. I adjure thee to come forth on the earth. Horus uttered a spell over thee. Horus hacked thee in pieces. He spitteth upon thee. Thou shalt not rise up towards heaven. Thou shalt go downwards, O feeble one without strength, cowardly, unable to fight, blind without eyes, and with thine head towards upside down. They are talking about bacteria and viruses when they're talking about things like this. And they're talking about, look at all this where they go deeper. I'm not going to read every line. Let me go, hold on. I mean, this is very, very long. I mean, the part where they go into the waters, and it's really incredible. Yeah, I can't really go read all of this, and it'd take me forever on here. Hold on, let me get to the part. And you guys can get all of these translations. Like Wallace Budge they have reprinted translations. Like this is you could do like, actually, this one right here is from the Wallace Budge Legends of the Egyptian Gods. Has a lot of hieroglyphic text. Then you can get the one that he has where it's the gods of the Egyptians. But if you really want to go through his translations, you can get the Dover. You can get the Dover one, where it has like some of the volumes in. But I would first get the Big Osiris one from Wallace Budge. These are from the 1800s that are reprinted. I have some of the originals of this as well. I have them already packed up. This is the one of Osiris. This gives a lot of the good translations. And then I would definitely get the 3-volume series. You can get Dover publishes them all in one, which I have, but I don't mark those up. These are the 3 volumes of the Egyptian Heaven and Hell from Wallace Budge. You can get the reprints of these, right? And these have the translations of the Book of Two Ways, the Book of Gates, the Book of Caverns, which are the precursors to the Book of the Dead, and describe all of the regions of the magnetosphere, or the Duart, or they call them Ats, little different regions. And you'll see in the regions of many of the symbols, they do exactly look like even the magnetosphere and things like this. And their context and what they're describing is describing the exact dynamics of the Egyptian, of the magnetosphere. And these Ats and the serpents, I mean, there's the bacteria and the bacterial phages that cause death and cause new life and all of that. And I do believe that the scorpions that sting are bacterial phages, like right here. These are one of the Ats. This is exactly like our 2-dimensional view of the magnetosphere, right? Very interesting. And that's in our Ats. And the context describes it. The context describes it. The waters, the plasmic waters and all of this. So everybody, I would go to my Patreon. I have so much information on there already, a catalog of information from 2017 that's on there. And you guys, I have thousands of posts to go to, and I'm doing daily posts on there as well. So patreon.com/the mystical spiral is actually the best place to go to find any of my information. I'm also on Truth Frequency Radio on Saturday nights, which I won't be on there tonight because I'll be traveling, but that is the best place to go to for all of my information, patreon.com/the mystical spiral. And remember that my website, the mysticalspiralstore.com, the best copper and crystals on the planet. Yeah, it's going to be rough. It's scary to do this right now because we're literally like, I got enough money to get us there. So I'm literally going to be there starting from scratch. It's a little scary because I'm from New York and I'm used to fast pace, and we're going out to literally Amish country. So I'm a little worried, but it's just the 3 of us. That's pretty much all I got in life. So we're gonna make it work. And I've always been a warrior no matter where I went. So I'll always be carrying that torch. So this is only going to be more availability for you guys. This is divine timing, but this is going to be better for everybody else that's looking to get more information. And we're going to be doing group prayers. We're going to be doing prayer battles. We're going to be battling certain cosmic events that are happening, certain things, because there's a war going on out there. From 18, let me give you guys, my farm neighbors, I could get chicken from, chicken's eggs. Eggs. So my goal is to do many, many things, everybody. So I lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was just gonna. So people don't realize. I'll leave you with a gem. This is a very important time. Not just me moving. This is a time for humanity that's important. Right now, from the time I mentioned, from 1879, right? That's when we had discoveries that happened of light. I got off my train of thought from before, right? So something was discovered on the spiritual plane through various people on a collective basis with light that emerged physical materialization of light. And this is when we transferred on a collective level in 1879 to a new phase, which they call in Theosophy, the age of Archangel Michael, which I truly believe, right? So on 1879, because of what was accessed in our collective free will network of light, it physically manifested two big inventions in 1879. I wonder if you guys know what these are. Let me see if you know. One was we discovered plasma. We didn't get the name plasma, I think, until the 1920s. You guys can figure out if I'm right or not, look that up. But they did, I think it was Sir William Crook Sir William Crook, he did the glow discharge tube test that rediscovered plasma in 1879, which is the fourth state of matter. Most of the universe is made of plasma. All suns and stars emit plasma, right? It's a network of information that cannot be destroyed. Cannot be destroyed, right? So not only was plasma rediscovered, but what else was discovered in 1879? I think it was in later November. What was this? The light bulb. The light bulb. Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla both were working with these kind of inventions that year. And this is when the light bulb was first introduced, the very idea that we even used that metaphorical symbol for an idea. This was generated in 1879, and we went through a shift on this planet on the collective level to a new war in heaven over knowledge, a new war on this planet over knowledge. And what happened when these great discoveries were made? Humans did not want to share these discoveries with each other. Most of them. Nikola Tesla would have. He was ostracized. Thomas Edison wanted to be the only man in town, right? So you can see some of the knowledge that was accessed was not meant, we were not spiritually, most humans at the time were not spiritually ready to appropriately apply and handle that knowledge. They were not their spiritual ego was not ready for that knowledge. And this has happened many times where knowledge was given to us, or accessed, if you want to say, and we were not able to handle it. People get greedy. They want power and control over that knowledge. This is what's happening, people, right now. And from now until the year 2400, this is the time of Archangel Michael. In the year 2400, we enter a terrifying new age. Worse than you can ever imagine, worse than here if we don't change. By the year 2400, we will no longer be human. We will be the resemblance of what we call gray aliens. And this is slowly happening. Our DNA is slowly changing. Our environment is slowly changing. And right now is the time where it's the last battle for our genetic humanity. We will soon lose the resemblance of a human. Right now, we are on the last battle. Right now. And it's time to stand up and fight, or lose your humanity. So follow me